I want to tell you about the moment I almost torched a £5,500 client relationship. Not because I underdelivered, not because we weren't a good fit, but because my nervous system felt threatened. And it let it make the decision for me, almost as if I ran an autopilot and my nervous system just completely just took over. And here's what was happening. The client was being difficult. He was taking days to respond, creating friction at every single turn, right? And so every day that passed, it almost felt like something was building inside of me, thoughts that, maybe he's not wanting to commit, a million things. And as that sort of built and built and built, almost my nervous system felt threatened. And so my amygdala, something that we'll get into later on, had read the situation as an attack. And so instead of staying clear, instead of staying grounded, I kept pursuing, I kept on going, kept on feeling threatened. My nervous system kept on feeling threatened. And so then I popped, then it happened. I sent a message saying, if you're not going to commit, we're done, in those specific words. Now, you know, on the surface of things, it may have sounded, decisive. It may have sounded like I was creating boundaries, but it wasn't. My nervous system was in full threat mode, and it dressed as confidence. And so, because he then took it the wrong way, and I almost lost him as a client. Not because of a bad strategy, again, it was because my nervous system was completely under attack. And so, why am I saying this story to you? Is because for most of you as business owners, maybe it's a message that you sent in frustration that you wish you could say another way. For others, it could be a decision you made too fast, too quick, and because of that, you're now sitting in the discomfort of it. And it wasn't you, it was your nervous system feeling threatened. So we all, as business owners, as yourself, you feel like your specific problem is specific to you, but it's not. The details are different, but the mechanism remains the same. And so today we're going to speak to you about the mechanism, your nervous system. And there are a few things that we're going to cover. We're going to speak about why and what happens to your body when making a decision, the three decision sentence is part of the decision making process while your brain is sort of going through these different things. So there are six mechanisms that happens in your body when you make a decision or during that process. The first one is your nervous system is deciding before you are. What does that mean? It means that the nervous system actually receives 11 million bits of sensory data every single second. Your conscious mind only processes about 50 of those. 50 out of 11 million, imagine that. So the rest is filtered by your nervous system based on your history, based on condition, culture, wherever. What you learned was safe and what wasn't. It's all being filtered from this. And so your perception of any business opportunity that you have, any decision that lands in front of you is actually not the objective reality. It is only your reality. And this is why we always say in coaching is that how you see the world affects how your actions are as a result. And so it's such a heavily edited version of it. And so if you put yourself in the room with another business owner and you have the same decision that you are to be made, you know, one sees a door potentially opening, the other one sees as a threat. And so because of the filters, the different filters that we create around, the same situation can provide two very different perceptual outcomes as well as the tangible outcome. See, and so the difference really truly isn't intelligence. It's what the nervous system perceives to be a threat and what it doesn't perceive to be a threat. The second one is where most business owners become stuck, and it's the difference between the two gears that we have in our nervous system. The first one is what we call the sympathetic nervous system, the alert one. And the second gear we have is parasympathetic, the calm one. Every decision you make is either colored by alert outcome or from alertness or from calmness. So when the decision is made from a place of alertness, it feels like there's a threat going on, something that they have to react to, and it feels like they're in survival mode. Whereas when it's made from a place of calmness, i.e., the parasympathetic nervous system, it's more reflective, it's more clear, strategic, and creative as a result, because you are able to control your nervous system and be in a more of a relaxed state. And so that's you either make a decision either from one state or the other. So what follows this? It's the third thing, which is either dopamine, serotonin, where sometimes winning feels like nothing. And so most people think that dopamine, most business owners think that dopamine is the reward chemical. It actually isn't. It's the pursuit chemical. It drives you towards things outside of yourself. And so when dopamine is healthy, every milestone on the way to the goal releases a hit of dopamine. So you feel motivated, you move, you continue, you decide with clarity until you reach that goal. But here's what happens under high performing environments to high performing business owners who are constantly in execution mode, constantly under pressure, constantly in a threat response. So at one point, dopamine actually becomes manic. It's something that you relentlessly begin to chase, that dopamine hit. So that could be more revenue, more clients, more growth, but you feel nothing when you actually get there because there is not that contentment that's being kept. And they're almost like a placebo effect when the dopamine is getting hit all the time. You just lose its effect. And so there's no satisfaction. It's just always, okay, next one, next one, next one, just more pressure. And there's always that feeling of until I get to the next one, I won't feel like this. This is usually the sort of language that's behind all of that. And the outside serotonin is your contentment signal. Is the okay, I'm enough right now. I have enough right now, but that's nowhere to be seen. And so because you're not giving your nervous system the regulation and the regulated rest it needs to produce it, it's always feeling like it's dissatisfied. And so if you really, really look at the research and if you really look at what the main reason as to why things like burnout happen and decision fatigue happens is because there's such a high level of pursuit and there's zero contentment. I've seen this myself in working with six and seven figure business owners is that there is such a high level of until I get this, this will happen. Until I get this, I won't rest. And there's constant need of dopamine, this constant feeling of threat that I need to get this done. And always that feeling of being under pressure, making decisions from that place. It always feels like there is a high level of pursuit and zero contentment. And so every decision is being made from a place of fear as opposed to a place of calm and a place of safety for the nervous system itself. And so the fourth thing or the fourth mechanism is that agitation is not the enemy, rather it's the entry point. And so here is something that completely changed how I understood what happened with that client that I mentioned earlier is agitation and strain is the entry point to neuroplasticity. Again, we will explain that as we go along. That the resistance becomes the major decision. That resistance before the major decision itself, the tightness, the friction, the pull towards reacting, is your nervous system's way of telling you to just slow down and stop. Because it's telling you that you are on the edge of your current wiring of being reactive, right? And so when you constantly make decisions as a figure business owner, seven, eight-figure business owner, when you constantly make a decision from that state, your brain effectively rewires to that way. And so next time you even try and make a decision from a place of calm, it just feels like you can't, or it feels like there's such a high level of resistance when you try to, because you have created the rewiring that it requires to make a decision from a threat state because it's happened so many times. And so we ask ourselves, why can you actually rewire? Like, why you can actually rewire this feeling of threat is because most of the time, neuroplasticity, when it's been done, you can always not undo it, but you can retrack or you can make a different way in which the brain responds to things. It's not the end all and be all because the brain is constantly being shifted and constantly creating new neural networks. And so, how do we actually do that? It actually requires the first step is having that alertness. And you cannot be rewiring in a passive, comfortable state. The brain needs a release of epinephrine, which is almost like adrenaline. Yeah, the alertness signal, to open the window for change. And so agitation itself is not the enemy, it is the prerequisite that is necessary for you to rewire your brain. And so you need to actually have a form of rest after you've created this environment. So the actual rewiring does not happen during that hard moment. It happens during the rest. When you sleep, this is again why when you make a decision, sometimes, if you can, you sleep on it, but sometimes you create that restful period before you can make a decision. Sleeping, deliberate stillness. 20 minutes of non-sleep deep rest, what we call NSDR, immediately after an intense mental effort. The research that is cited can accelerate learning and consolidate it itself. So the decision gets wired during the quiet, not during the noise. This is the most important part. When you need to make a decision, having that level of stillness is so important, not during the noise itself. And so you have to make sure, ensuring that there is a level of calmness, level of stillness during the point at which you need to make a decision. And so now, when you try and make the decision, what do you need to focus your attention on? Because what you focus your attention on itself consistently is what the brain will strengthen and what will the brain will rewire towards. So every time you choose regulation over reaction, every time you pause before responding, every time you complete the decision process fully, you are literally building a new neural pathway, not metaphorically, physiologically, physically. All right? And so what that allows you to do is take you away from a pattern of feeling stuck, feeling threatened to a pattern of calmness, to a pattern of stillness. And so this is what allows you to make decisions from that state of being a calm, relaxed, six-figure business owner and making decisions that actually serve you, not what makes you feel threatened. And the last one, last mechanism is what we call the 90-minute decision window. Is that your brain cycle is what we, in other words, the ultradian rhythm. It can only focus on 90-minute blocks a day. Sorry, throughout the day. And so the first 5 to 10 minutes of every cycle always feel hard. But the neural chemicals, as they begin to warm up, they make it easier. So the business owner who sits down to make a hard decision feels the resistance in the first 10 minutes and then closes their laptop. They quit right before the window actually begins to open. And so they read the physiology, the biology as a sign when it was actually just a sign for them to warm up into it. So the best tip from today, the best way to actually make the decisions from a place of service is guarding your sharpest 90 minutes of your day and make that only your decision-making block, right? Not within, your admin time or whatever, because that's not when the mental effort is required. So make sure and ensure that you do this and you really slow down to these six different mechanisms, not as a means of making yourself feel guilty or anything like that, but rather actually just allowing yourself to feel and use these mechanisms to get yourself in more of a relaxed state. So give those a try, and then see how they actually work. All right. And so now I'm going to show you how we can maximize our decision centers and using decision centers that serve you as opposed to make you feel threatened or make your nervous system itself feel threatened. So when we talk about the three decision centers of the brain or of our body or of ourselves, we talk about three main things. We talk about the nafs or the self slash the ego. We talk about the intellect, and then we also talk about the heart, right? So these are the three centers. Now, if you think of it as a sort of like a push and pull system, this is where we sort of get our decisions mainly from, plus using our brain's physiology. Now, if you put intellect in the middle, we put the heart to the right, and our ego to the left, right? Now, when we feel threatened, when our nervous system feels under threat constantly, what happens is we lose our intellect. We lose this because it cannot make clear strategic decisions. Because the amygdala, as we mentioned, the emotional center of the brain, it almost gets fired up. And the part of the brain which is necessary for clear thinking almost shuts down, what we call the prefrontal cortex. And so the intellect now drives towards the ego. He almost listens to what the ego is saying because this is the loudest at that point. And so this is where threat happens. This is where lack of safety happens because it feels under threat. And so the decision will be made from that state, right? So this is where we are actually in a state of reactivity because we are constantly being reactive to what our ego is saying from the things that are around us, our previous experiences, all of these different things. Now, on the other side, when we have our decision making coming from a place of calmness, place of proactivity, our intellect goes towards our heart, namely our purpose, our values, our morals, all of these different parts of the decision making process is what connects us, what aligns us to our process. So our purpose, what aligns us to our values. And so when the intellect can go towards that, you can make more of a regulated decision. That's when decisions become regulated, and that's when they become service, not when they become threat. And so this is such an important part because now you can understand why the nervous system is so important because it comes into how these two respond to actually making that decision-making process itself and finalizing a decision itself. So always remember, we want to always come from this place, not from the place of our ego from past experiences. Yes, we learn from them, but we don't use them as creating examples of why something may not happen or from coming from a place of fear. And so when we look at it from one of my clients, he was doing 30K months and he wanted to release the program, but his ego and his fears were telling him, no, don't do it. People are going to copy you. But really and truly, when we began to regulate and use this decision flow framework, he actually began to regulate himself and realized actually there's nothing to fear here because if people are copying me, that's actually a good thing. And the moment he shifted from what if it goes wrong to who am I being in this decision, that paralysis of making a decision broke. He made that extra 10K plus more, and he made his next decision even quicker. So ask yourself, become that person. Say to yourself, I decide without emotional drag. I trust Allah with outcomes. And so when you do that, when you become that person, when you regulate your nervous system, this is when you can truly, truly, truly make decisions on who you want to be, how it serves you, and most importantly, how it will serve your overall purpose. I hope this video was good, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.